The Betrayal Chapter 7. After about an hour, Star and I walked the rest of the way to our aunt's. Star took a while to learn how to change back, and smiled at me when she did. A proud yet tired smile. I stayed in my demon form, hoping it'd give her some help to get used to hers. I wanted to talk about it, but Star hadn't said much, if anything, since we left the field. I wanted to know how she was feeling, what she knew, if anything. My mind was swirling with questions. I knew she wasn't too keen on my demon form. I wouldn't blame her. She was tortured for me being this way. I groaned internally as we continued to walk. I glance at her as she looks down at the ground below her, and I put my wing around her. She just smiles softly before frowning. It wouldn't be easy to talk about this with her. It's not like I can just be like, "Hey, Stars, so I guess you're just like me now," after she's seen me bullied, struggle with my magic, despise every part of my being for being a demon. I can't just say, "Do you want to talk about it?" That's stupid, because obviously she doesn't. She's silent as we walk. It would help us both if we talked about it, and I have my books, so we can study magic together. We walked up to the house. Our aunt's car wasn't in the driveway, so we assumed she wasn't home. Star sat down on the steps of the porch, and I sat down beside her in silence. After a moment, I lean over, drawing in the gravel below us, moving a rock accidentally as I see our aunt's hidden key. Star jumps as I burst into laughter. "What was that about?" Star said, anger in her words. I hold up the key so she can see it. Nice find?" she says, snickering softly. We get up and walk inside after unlocking the door. I sit down on the couch as Star walks over and grabs the phone, calling our mom and telling her that we got to our aunt's safely. I cringe slightly. I mean, we're safe now. I look down at my arm, confused as I notice it healed completely. I don't remember healing it at all, but maybe I did. I lean back as she continues her call. They talked for a while as I relaxed. I felt the tension grow in the room as Star ran out of things to say, so she politely hung up the call with her mom and sat down on the couch beside me. She looked up at the spot on the roof I was looking at, searching for something that I could see, but she couldn't. She tilted her head before snickering. "So that's where one of them went," Star said softly. I chuckled and nodded. "Think she knows it's there?" I say, looking at the glow-in-the-dark star sticker I'd stuck to the roof years ago. One of the corners was bent as the stickiness started to fade. Silence soon filled the room again after Star chuckled and shook her head. The silence seemed comforting, but it only made my mind race. I looked at Star, who was sitting there with her eyes closed, then looked at my knees as my foot bounced quietly. I opened my mouth to talk about it, only to close it again like a fish. I stare off towards the floor as I try and think of the right words in my head, going over the questions I want to ask time and time again. A soft blue light catches my eye as I think. It glowed brightly beside me, sparkling with life. I looked over at Star, who was holding this flame in her hands. The soft but royal blue that it glowed, identical to the one that scared off the cougar. She notices my glance, and I see her fire spark as she looked between me and it. I gently put my hand above it, but Star moves her hands away, the flame sparking in the air. "Wait, I don't want to hurt you," she said softly. "Then don't," I say, knowing this was the hardest part of learning how to control my fire. It can be harmless, only harm non-living things or hurt everything. I felt stupid once I found out it was just a matter of will and want. She looked at me worriedly as I moved my hand closer. Of course, focus was a key part of controlling it, and as my hand hovered above the harmless flame, Star smiled softly at me. Until our aunt came bursting through the door. Star's focus on her flame snapped, just like her fire, as it sparked and burned my hand. I flinch, pulling away reflexively before Star panics and makes the fire disappear. She grabbed my hand softly as I heal, examining it and apologizing to me as I smile and wave at our aunt, who had a worried look on her face. "Hey, how was work?" I say, smiling. "How did you get in? When I saw the front door open, I thought I was robbed," she says angrily, although calming down surprisingly fast. "And why are you in that form? Is everything okay?" I flinch and look at my wings. I hadn't realized I forgot to change back again. Sorry, I accidentally found your hidden key while playing in the gravel. As for my form, I forgot again. Sorry. She smiles at me, coming over and patting us both on the head. Most of our family knew about the fact I was demon. Sadly, most of our family also hated it, and kind of abandoned my mom because of it. Our aunt, on the other hand, despite being as religious as the rest, didn't mind. Respected me just like the rest of us, and took care of us just the same as she did for her kids when they were still around. It's all right, my dear. Now, why are you guys hiding out here for a while? Your mom called to say I should be expecting you to, but she didn't know why you guys ran off all of a sudden. I rub the back of my neck, groaning. If you don't want to tell me, I understand. No, you should know. I mean, we're in your house after all, I say softly. Star was silent beside me. I put my hand on Star's shoulder as I continued to talk, not wanting to draw attention to her, but wanting to comfort her. We're just having some trouble at school, so we wanted to take a break from the area. She nods softly. Well, I was planning on making meatloaf for dinner. Does that sound all right to you two? Star smiles up at her, her eyes lighting up slightly. Yeah, that sounds awesome. Star's smile seemed slightly forced. I knew she liked her cooking, but I could also tell she was trying to force down her feelings. I grab our bags as I stand up. Is that spare room empty? I say softly, hiding the concern I have for Star and wanting to talk with her in some peace. Our aunt smiles and nods as she heads off towards the kitchen. Go ahead and make yourselves at home. I'll start making dinner. I force a smile towards Star and start heading upstairs. She followed quickly behind me with her head down and quiet. As we got to the guest room, I put my backpacks on our bed and sit down on the floor against mine, relaxing with my arms on my knees in front of me. Star sits down much like me on the other side of the room, with her knees close to her chest. She looked at me worriedly. Is your hand okay? She looks at me, tears almost in her eyes. I smile and show her my hand. Forget I could heal or something. I snicker as I put my hand down. There was an odd silence, broken slightly by the clashing of dishes downstairs. So... I start. I can see Star cringe as she looks at me. What? We both want to talk about it, but neither of us wants to start. She nods, shrugging her shoulders and looking at the ground. I was about to speak up again before Star did. Do you remember that nightmare I had when we were bullied by Devin and Jason? She looks up at me, worry in her eyes. I tried and thought hard, the numerous thoughts running through my mind until it was like it was circled in a red pen in my mind. The dream Star had about her being a demon and the flame she wielded, explained just like the one she wields now. Oh, Star, I promise nothing like that will happen. You're my little sis. She smiles at me before I continue. You could never hurt me, and I promise we'll work on your power. It'll be easy to control with me as your teacher. She sighs, smiling softly and putting her head on her knees. Yeah, but... I look at her as she looks up at me. I woke up from the same dream this morning. I tilt my head. I woke up in the other form. I stare at her, sadness in my eyes, knowing she had to deal with trying to shift back all by herself. I was scared I did something to you. That's why I came running. She chuckles softly. I didn't even care that I was a demon. I don't think I pieced it together until we started walking. I stay silent as she keeps talking. And to top it off, I burnt my sweater. She laughs as tears form in her eyes. I was so scared, Emma. She looks up at me again, tears now streaming down her face. I'm still so scared. I move over to hug her. I don't want to hurt anyone. Hey, come on, it's okay. You don't have to hurt anyone. She pushed me away before I could continue, anger in her eyes as she glared at me before closing them. But now Ava's after us, and you saw how she looked between us when she found out. She probably knows what that spell did to me. Now I have this form I'm terrified of. I'm gonna get bullied and hunted down my entire life. She cries as I just sit there, too scared to hug her again, a little offended, but I know she doesn't mean it. God, I hate her! She opens her eyes, looking at the roof, trying to hold back tears. My eyes blink a few times, taking a double take as I look at her eyes. She's a monster. She huffs before wiping her tears away and shaking her head, focusing on her breathing for a minute, before she notices me staring at her eyes. What? She said. You... I glance around, trying to find the words before shaking my head and scrambling over to my books, grabbing the first one and flipping a good few pages. You aren't a pureblood demon like me, if it helps any. She huffs as she brings her knees back to her chest. Great, I'm even more of a freak, she mumbles. No, listen, you were cool. She tilts her head at me, not amused, but curious. You're a half-demon. Only one of your eyes turned black. And what does that mean? I take a moment to look through the page before handing it back to her to look at it. You have a shorter tail, and less powerful fire, which is a good thing in your situation. Straight horns, and the random power from this list? Do I get to choose? I laugh softly as she reads over the page. No, I don't think so. I laugh harder as she closes her eyes. I assume she saw the shape-shifting power. She opens one eye with a groan as she realizes she's still human. That's a long list. Besides, I think it would be better to find out normally, don't you? She nods and continues to read the book. There's so many things to learn here. So much of this world we have no idea about. Star looks up at me, her eyes lighting up before they look over the room. They now had a nice royal blue color whenever her magic was stronger. You can see in the dark? I laugh as I lean back. Yeah, duh. How do you think I saw everyone in those alleyways? She smiles at me and then back at the book. Dad really had a plan for you, didn't he? She smiles softly. Now we get the information we need to make our own plan. Emma, don't you understand? With this, we can open everyone's eyes. We can show everyone just what Dad wanted to show. That not all demons are bad? I say with a chuckle. Yeah, that's what I want too. We sat there, going over the first book. I started paying attention to what Star and Ira were going over yesterday. The spells and magic that was in our world that we could use to overpower Ava if we learned enough of it. Our aunt calls us down for dinner just a few minutes later, and after our dinner, we stay up reading and practicing small spells that we learned, like how to control fire that wasn't ours. Star seemed to have a much stronger power to her spells than I did. It made me smile to see her so interested in something. It was probably like a fantasy to her before now, and now she gets to try everything she thought of as a joke when we were little. Morning came sooner than we wished. We stayed up so late reading that we didn't get much sleep. Thankfully, we were able to sleep in and promptly did so. Until noon. I groaned when Star tried to wake me up, wishing for just 10 more minutes, or maybe another hour or two. Come on, you said you'd help me control my power, right? Well, I want to learn as fast as I can, and I don't want anyone to get hurt. I groan and roll over, pulling the blankets over me. No, I need more sleep. I cover my head with my pillow as she whines. Come on! She was persistent in trying to wake me, shaking me and pulling the blankets off me when just talking wouldn't work. After a second or two of nothing, I turned to peek out from under my pillow to see Star looking through the book, an evil smile on her face as she creates a spell circle with her fire. I stare in amazement as she does the same, not realizing that it would work. She creates the runes with ease, and before I know it, I have a pile of snow covering my body. I scream as I try and get it off, shivering and sweeping snow off myself and the bed. Starine! I yell, glaring at her. I'm sorry, I didn't think it was going to be that much. She smiles, her face lighting up. Don't start messing with me now that I showed you what those spells do. And didn't you read that the power was relative to how big the circle was? She laughs, falling to her knees as she does so. I sigh as I use my fire to melt the rest of the snow and heat myself. We laugh softly and relax as we study the book. You want to practice your actual magic yet? I say softly. The time ticked by slowly, and our aunt had left for work about an hour ago. Star nods as she closes the book. I guess taking a break would help my eyes a bit. She hands the book back to me, and I grab the rest of them as we head downstairs and outside. So, what are we thinking? Flying? Fire magic? Finding out my ability? I laugh softly as she bounces around. Well, we could start on your fire magic. That scarecrow over there would be a good place to start. For aim training, anyway. I say softly, walking over to the scarecrow in the middle of the field. There was a dried-up garden around it I took note of. I flip open the first book again, finding where we bookmarked the water spell, just in case. We could work on actual damage control, too, I mumbled, setting the scarecrow up straight. I don't think she'd hurt anything on purpose, though, so that might be tricky. If only it was Ava. I chuckled to myself as Star calls out about a yard away. Oh, yeah, all ready for you, I say, stepping away from it and waving at Star. Star stood there forming fireballs and getting a few inches away from the scarecrow before those fireballs would disappear. Eventually, she got the hang of giving them enough power to last. Now she had to work on aim. I'll admit, my aim is still garbage, but it's nice to find ways to help Star anyway. I wanted her to be comfortable with her new form and powers. It'd be so much harder if she has to deal with bullying from everyone and herself. I flinch as a fireball headed towards me throws me out of my thoughts. I quickly step out of the way as I hear Star yell, I'm so sorry! I laugh as I wave my hand dismissively at her. It took a few more minutes before she figured out how to aim better. As she figured it out, I was looking through the books for some sort of illusion spell. A dangerous idea filled my head as I glanced back up at Star. Her proud smile stretched across her face as she hit the target a few times in a row. I looked back at the book, sighing softly. God, she is going to hate me, I mumbled to myself. I create a spell circle with my flame, hidden by the book, flickering my glance from it and Star every so often as I created it. Star was backing up slightly, testing her aim, and I groan as I finish the spell, activating it as I look at Star. Her expression changes from proud happiness to fear as a fireball disappears before it can leave her hand. I flinched as she turned into her demon form. Her right eye turns black as she stares down the scarecrow. I glance at it, surprised the spell worked, almost admiring how similar it looked to Devon. I shake my head, having convinced myself it's an illusion. I felt scared making it look like Ava, so I made it into someone else, obviously. I stare at Star as she stares at the illusion. Her hands formed a small flame that flickered to life. I hoped she wasn't in pain when she turned into her demon form. Her magic was already really close to the surface, after all. She closed her eyes tightly, her hands moving upwards to aim the fireball as it grew. I expected this reaction up until this point. My eyes widen as her fireball grows bigger, tears streaming down her face. I wanted to undo the spell, to run up to her, but was frozen in my tracks as she opened her eyes, both of them glowing a bright royal blue color, her left eye black as well. Her flame sparked as it grew much bigger, until finally it was fired from her hand. The fire glowed brightly as it came towards me and the illusion. I was staring right at it as it approached. I didn't even take into account how large it was and how close I was standing. I yelp slightly as it hits the illusion, the scarecrow bursting into flames and dying down quickly. The blast of fire made me trip over my foot as I finally snapped out of my trance. I fall onto the grass beside it, lying on the ground with a scraped arm as I stare at the scarecrow. It was burnt and still smoking slightly in front of me. I glance at Star as she shakes her head and stares at it, thinking about what just happened before her eyes widen as she comes running over to me. Emma, oh my God, are you okay? I don't know what I was thinking. She rambles as she kneels over beside me, worried she hit me with the fireball instead. Hey, I'm okay, I say, cutting her off. She sits there, examining me for a second, putting her hand on my arm. I flinch in pain as my sweater runs over the scrape. I was about to heal before it just didn't seem to hurt anymore. I pull up my sleeve and stare at where I thought the scrape was. I look down confused, thinking maybe I just healed a bit faster than I wanted to. until I thought back to the cougar incident, and I looked at Star with even more confusion. She still had tears in her eyes, and I hugged her tightly. I'm so sorry, I mumbled, taking into account what just happened. No, I understand what you were doing. I saw you create the spell. I sighed at her words before looking back at my arm. I think for a minute and turned into my demon form. Star flinches slightly as I grab my tail. The sharp point on it was the exact thing I needed. I make a small mark on my hand. Emma? She grabs my hand and my tail, pulling them away from each other. What are you doing? She grabs my hand after I move my tail back. I just let her sit there, staring at my hand. I make sure not to heal it myself and smile proudly once it heals anyway. Star sits there looking at me with a sense of anger. And why are you smiling? I smile wider as I stand up, dusting myself off. I didn't heal, I say, putting my hand out for her, helping her up. Yes, you did. I saw it, she said angrily, moving my hand away and getting up on her own. She glares at me as I just smile at her. I can slowly see it sink in as she looks at my hand again, and she stares at me in disbelief. There might be a god after all, I joke, walking towards the house again. She stares at her hands with an odd smile before running after me. What do you mean by that? She continues to look at my hand, trying to piece things together, not believing what we both know was the truth. I just mean, you hate the idea of hurting people so much, and you get lucky with a half-blood ability to heal others? Doesn't sound like luck to me. She smiles wide after I confirm her suspicions. Well, maybe it's some sort of magic thing, like the soul colors. She smiles, bouncing around before stopping at the door in front of us. But we make a deal right now. Her voice gets serious as she stands in front of me, anger in her eyes. They were still soft, but I could tell she was angry. No more spells on each other. I smile and nod. Yeah, I expected that one. I went a little too far with that, didn't I? I sigh, rubbing the back of my neck. Yeah, she says sternly, before turning and walking inside. As we walk inside, I sit down on the couch, glancing into the kitchen and admiring the ranch-like house that I haven't visited in a while. Star sits down beside me, still in her demon form, just like me. She plays with her tail, swishing it back and forth. I snicker at her as I turn on the TV, above the unlit fireplace. Oh, can we watch that true crime series I was watching? I groan and move the remote away from her. But I haven't finished watching that doctor show yet. I smile and stick my tongue at her. Oh, come on! You know that doctor dies from a bus in the next season. She smiles and reaches for the remote. Yeah, but that was when I was watching it with Mom. Now I get attached to the characters. She laughs at me and sits back. Fine, but maybe with his new power, I can learn a bit with that show. She smiles softly as she kicks her feet up. I smile at her as I turn on the show, admiring how well she overcomes new obstacles. I lean my head back, just listening to the episode I had watched already, for a moment to relax. Our aunt came home late that night, and we finished off the meatloaf we had for dinner yesterday. The night was topped off with watching some old movies we watched as kids, and laughing about how funny it used to be, along with some ice cream and snacks until we finally went to bed. Star passed out pretty quickly after she got comfortable. I lay awake in bed, staring out the window for a while. The thoughts of the past year went through my head, the words Ira said ringing in my head like the perfect dark joke. Can't you guys ever catch a break? I snicker as I repeat the words to myself, glancing over at Star, who was sleeping soundly. I sigh as I remember just how much she had to go through because of me. Soon, though, my tired eyes close, my mind welcoming me into itself as the waking world fades away from my thoughts. I stand there, in the purplish hue of my mind, waiting around for about a minute, then sighing as I hear footsteps behind me. Right on time, I say, turning to greet the wolf. Wish I could forget about you, though. He sighs, sitting a little ways away from me. You understand what's coming, right? He says solemnly. I look down before sitting on my knees. Well, since you're here, I assume the danger isn't over yet, I chuckle to myself. Which means Ava's probably still out to get us. He nodded softly. His eyes seemed to hold a trace of guilt as he looked away. And I feel my words caught in my throat as he seemed to mumble something I couldn't understand. The glow in his eyes made me think it was a spell. I shake my head, pushing past the lump in my throat. And I assume with that look, I may not be as well off as we could hope. I tear up and look to my right, where Star would be sleeping across the room from me. "You're smart," he said softly. "Yeah, let's just hope I'm smart enough to teach Star everything she could possibly learn about being a demon." He stared at me in disbelief for a second before I continued. "I don't have much time, though. I can feel it." He looks away again. His jaw was shut tight as he seemed to search for something. "I know, Ava. She's not going to stop hunting me down. Just hope she has some sympathy for Star." He stands up after nodding once again. "I hope so too," he mumbles as he turns away. This weird in-between state of a dream ends as he walks away, fading to nothing in the darkness of my mind. I stir slightly, waking up and looking over at Star. I can't help but feel guilty. If that wolf knows anything, he's not telling me anything at all that I could use to protect her. I'll come back and kill him, I swear. I felt my tired body give in once again, drifting off to a proper sleep this time. A night like many others, filled with nightmares and sleeplessness. Something I've grown to live with. Something I hope Star never has to deal with.